Hello, my name is Sandy Adamitis, the social media director for the Page International Screenwriting Awards, and your host for the Writers Hangout, a podcast that celebrates the many stages of writing, from inspiration to the first draft, revising, getting a project made, and everything in between. We'll talk to the best and the brightest in the entertainment industry and create a space where you can hang out, learn from the pros, and have fun. Hey, writers. Last week's episode, where we interviewed two Page judges on how they evaluate your screenplay, blew up, and I'm happy to bring you two more judges, Dwayne Smith and Mike Kuciak, to continue the conversation. Mike Kuciak has two movies coming out in 2022. He's the writer-director of one and writer-producer of the other. He's a producer on a third film scheduled to begin production in late 2022. He has served as a producer and executive producer on several independent films. He was the senior vice president of development for a lit management production company and thereafter the founder CEO of his own company before hanging that up to focus on writing, directing, and producing. Dwayne Smith has been working as a professional screenwriter since 1999 and has written scripts for Warner Brothers, Lionsgate, Intermedia, and Gold Circle. His urban thriller, Pay the Lady, is currently in post-production, and his sci-fi feature, Implant, is now in post-production. Representing the management firm Circle of Confusion at numerous screenwriting conferences and festivals, Dwayne has listened to hundreds of pitches and read countless screenplays in search of new writing talent. As a judge for the Page Awards, he reads comedies, thriller/horror, science fiction, and action/adventure scripts. These two judges spill a lot of beans in this interview, so let's get started. Mike Kuciak and Dwayne Smith, thank you so much for joining us on the Writers Hangout.
Hello, it's my sincere pleasure to be here.
Great.
Yes, thanks for having
Dwayne,
me.
are you happy to be here?
I am.
Okay, good. Before we start, I thought it would be fun to play a round of Would You Rather. Are you guys in?
Sure.
Mike, would
Yes.
you rather have universal respect or unlimited power?
Unlimited power, because then I could demand universal respect.
Great. Dwayne, would you
Yes.
have universal respect or unlimited power?
My answer is the same. It seems like a no-brainer. It seems like a no-brainer to me.
Perfect.
The
Mike.
magic wand does all the work for you.
Mike, would you rather communicate only in emojis or never be able to text ever again?
I would never text again. I somehow was able to communicate with my fellow humanity before texts were a thing.
You know, I never thought I would be an emoji person, and I find myself using them. How about you, Dwayne? Emojis or never text again?
I think texting is so useful that I'd have to just use the emojis.
Cool. Dwayne, you first. Would you rather buy 10 things you don't need every time you go shopping or always forget the one thing that you need when you go to the store?
Easy. 10 things I don't need. I love shopping. I love buying stuff.
Mike.
I would go for the latter because I'm doing that anyways.
Yes, I hear you on that. Okay. Mike, would you rather give up your cell phone for a month or not bathe for a month?
It would have to be the cell phone.
Okay.
I'm a fastidious showerer type person. It's usually like 2 or 3 a day. I couldn't tolerate my own presence.
How about you, Dwayne?
Well, I mean, as much as I hate to give up my cell phone, not bathing for a month is really kind of disgusting.
It's kind of icky.
It's like I wouldn't be, I'd have to give up on cell phone.
Mike, would you rather be always stuck in traffic, but find a perfect parking spot? Or never hit traffic, but always take forever to park? It's a very LA question.
I ride a motorcycle, so I can park wherever the hell I damn well please. But if we're going to speak in hypothetics, let's say hypothetically I was in like some giant SUV. I would go for the former because then the traffic would allow me to listen to podcasts and music and stuff like that. Whereas circling around looking for parking is like more of an active kind of a thing to do. And you can't do anything else while you're doing that. So
and what podcast are you listening to in this big old SUV?
I sometimes guest host on a horror podcast called March Madmen right now.
Sorry, we were looking for the answer. The Writers Hangout.
That Dwayne. One too.
Dwayne, I'm going to give you a new one.
Okay.
Would you rather be locked for a week in a room that's overly bright or in a room that's totally dark?
That's a good one. Totally dark, I guess. Yeah, overly bright. Oh, my God. Well, wait. Let me think that over. No, totally bright. I take it back. Because I can always close my eyes.
True.
Right?
True.
And I can have both. I can have dark and light. But in the dark one, you only have dark. So, no, I go for the totally bright.
Mike, would you rather never use social media again or never watch?
Oh, there's more. Okay, yeah, go on.
Okay. Or never watch another movie ever again?
Given the fact that I've crafted my entire life around getting movies made, let's get rid of the social media. I'd rather never look at Twitter again than be in a situation where I never get to look at Raiders of the Lost Ark again.
Okay. Dwayne, last one. Would you rather have a tattoo of the title of the last script you read or the last TV show you watched?
The last TV show I watched.
And what would your tattoo say?
The Orville.
The Orville. Okay. Okay. I hope that you will use the original font in that.
Yes.
Question number 1. We ask all the judges this question. As a judge for the Page Awards, we ask you to evaluate a script based on 10 elements equally. Premise/concept, presentation, structure, plot, pacing, characters, dialogue, theme, style/tone, and commercial potential. Mike, what's the first thing you look for when you start reading a brand new script?
It's mostly commercial potential, which is intrinsically tied to premise/concept. Ultimately, a screenplay is a blueprint for a movie, and the more viable the movie project is in the real world of the current industry, then the more value the screenplay has. I think that everything else can be fixed. Everything else can be elevated. But when you talk to producers, let's say, including my own producing partners, when you have an element of, I think we can get this movie made, and everything else is the train, we're the parts of the train that come behind the engine. What are those called? The boxcars?
The boxcars. Yes.
Okay, yeah. I've had conversations where just like, it's such a great idea for a movie. Now all it has to be is good. And either the original writer cracks their own concept and makes it good, or else you can always just option the screenplay and hand it off to another writer to crack it. And that's, the hope is that the conceptual writer and the writer are one and the same. But, especially when you get to like studio level, that's almost rarely the case. But that's why, for instance, especially at the studio level, a lot of the production companies are vastly more interested in, say, doing a movie that's based on like a toy or a board game than a spec script, unless a spec has an equally huge pitchable concept that also plugs into a commercial paradigm.
We're talking big movies, correct?
Small movies, man, too, because
independent movies?
Well, it depends. It's like, if we're talking about like super duper indie, shot it for nothing on your phone kind of films that are primarily intended to do the festival circuit and cross their fingers and hopefully maybe win a Spirit Award or something like that, then the concept is it's whatever you can get shot amongst you and your contacts and your friends. But even if you're shopping, like, right now we're doing sales on a horror movie that I wrote the screenplay for and I'm a producer on. And
congratulations.
We shopped at the con. And in terms of the conversations that our sales agent has had with buyers, they're very direct, literal kind of people. It's like, exactly what is this movie? Where does it fit into the ecosystem of the industry? And and they won't spend 1 second trying to quote unquote figure out a movie that doesn't exactly that doesn't have like that pitch, if that makes sense. And for instance,
it kind of sounds like you're in the realm of everything in the script, not development. That's the world you run in. You run in the script's got to really be there and sell it. Am I wrong?
The script can elevate the project, and you definitely want an elevated script, because if the character work and the dialogue is elevated, then you have a better chance of luring name talent to the leads. And in many cases, financing is contingent on attaching names to your leads. And if you do, and especially if you're going to third-party financing, a studio or even independent financing, in many cases, if you don't attach a name, then the financing doesn't flow. You don't have a movie. I've been in a number of situations where we've been given a list of, if you get one of these 10 actors to play the lead to play XYZ character in the script, then we will connect with financing and we'll make the movie. And the level of character and dialogue has a direct impact on whether or not you're going to get one of those 10 names. That's both a hypothetical, but it's also a direct world. I've had those phone calls. I've been in those situations. And that applies to every level of filmmaking. The project that we're working on right now is it's a low budget horror movie for a very specific market, but at the same time I've also been slugging away at trying to get big action movies done for years and years and years, and they're always like almost getting made. We'll get a director, a star, a piece of financing. It's like sandcastles. We put it together, it kind of flies apart a little bit, but the ones that consistently get the most amount of traction toward production are the ones that are just simplest. Oh, I get it. I know exactly how we're going to get this movie made. I can see the one sheet. I can see the stars. I know exactly how we're going to sell this, what the budget level is going to be, And the unfortunate fact of the matter is, in most screenwriting teach 'em up classes, courses, how-dos, schools, name it, this type of thing is almost never touched on. There is a canard that says all you have to do is just write a good story, and then Hollywood rolls out this red carpet, and that is baloney. Ultimately, if you are looking for financing to connect with a motion picture project, you're looking to also be able to prove how they're going to see return on investment. And ultimately, everyone is trying to make a good movie, but the baseline is, if you don't get to make a good movie if you don't make a movie at all, if that makes sense.
Yes. Well, okay. That's all the time we have. Thank you, Mike and Dwayne. No, that was so helpful, Mike. You got to be honest, and that our writers don't want to hear fluff, and that's why we're doing this. How about you, Dwayne? What's the first thing you look for when you start reading a brand new script?
Well, fortunately, I have to kind of repeat what Michael said. I mean, my production company is called Damn Good Idea Productions. So for me, it's always the premise. It's always the idea. The idea is number one. The idea is more important than anything else on that list, by far. It's not even close. So if you don't have a good idea, you don't have anything. I don't care how good your writing is. I don't care how good your dialogue is. I mean, you might have a good sample, but your script probably won't sell. You must have a good idea. It doesn't have to necessarily be a high concept, amazing idea, but it has to be a good idea. And I think commercial potential and premise is kind of is redundant a little bit. I mean, the premise is that, it's also going to be commercial, like have a lot of commercial potential, most likely. The best example I can give of this is that I'm not only my producer, but I'm also a writer. And there was actually a bunch of years ago, I was at home and there was a knock at my door, and it was a FedEx guy. He delivered a script to me from Lionsgate. And I opened it up, and the script was a mess.
When you say a mess, I don't mean to be pedantic or anything, but I think it's helpful for our writers, meaning it wasn't formatted correctly, or we're talking story.
It was wrong. It wasn't formatted correctly. The page count was wrong. I mean, nothing about it was correct. Seriously, it was a mess. I really don't even understand how it got read at Lionsgate. I don't understand how somebody opened the script and looked at it and actually read it. I never got that story. They said, we like this script and we're looking for somebody to rewrite it. And I'm like, okay, this is nutty. But I read the script and I totally understood instantly because the idea was brilliant. It was a brilliant idea for a comedy. And they, like all studios and all producers, they see the money signs. They see the idea. Like Mike said, you can see the one sheet, you can see the trailer, you get it instantly. The writer, he can't deliver it. He can't execute the idea.
And it doesn't mean that writer won't ever get to won't ever level up. It just means,
no.
Right.
All those things can be learned. Like Mike said, all those things can be learned. You can learn how to write great dialogue. You can learn how to fix your pacing. You can learn how to write solid characters. But the trick, I know a lot of writers, right? The ones who are successful, the ones who sell scripts, they have really good ideas for screenplays. My level of producing, I find writers and I develop things with writers. So and a lot of times writers don't like to hear that. They're like, oh, well, I got this idea. And I'm like, well, that idea sucks. And they're like, but this other movie is like that. And I say, well, I got to tell you, there are 1,000 reasons why movies get made. Just because you see something that's out there that seems like you've seen it a million times, it doesn't mean that it got there because it was a spec script or because somebody loved the script. There's a lot of reasons why movies get made that have nothing to do with, some writer in a room writing a script. That's basically, for me, when I'm judging a script for the page, the first thing I'm interested in knowing and understanding, is this a good idea for a movie?
Great. Perfect. A second question, Mike. There's a saying in the industry that a good beginning keeps you reading, but a strong ending makes or breaks your screenplay. When you're reading a script, what makes you want to keep reading? And part two of the question is, how does a writer nail the ending?
I would say that the first 10 pages of your screenplay are the most important 10 pages because circling back around to what we were talking about with concepts and commercial potential, very often the people who will even take the time to read a screenplay at all will read the first 10 pages and decide on page 11 whether they're going to keep reading or not. And that's including talent who are reading for a role or financing, who's considering putting chips on a film producers who want to shuffle it around. Directors.
Right. And we hear about that 10 pages.
Yeah.
What do you need to get across the premise? But I'm a writer and I want to savor it. I want you to figure it out on page 30. Do I have to give that up?
You could. Yeah, I would recommend it. Yeah. It's like, listen, if you want to if you want to like really draw something out and savor it, then write the novel. Just write the novel. That's all you have to do. Here's the thing. Imagine that, think of the best director for your screenplay. That person is going to stop reading on page 11 unless something is grabbing them. Think of the perfect actor to play your lead. They're reading the first 10 pages looking for what their character is doing in that story. And if they don't see it, then on a page 11, they put it down. Producers and financing, they're looking at a script and they really don't want to read screenplays. But if they have to, is this a movie that can get made? And in those first 10 pages, you're establishing the genre, the paradigm, the idea of it, the pitch, ...
Dwayne, how about you?
Well, Mike has said something about, here's the thing. It's like you said, some writers, they want to savor like their big idea. They want to put it out there slowly, like reel it out slowly. And I think that can be done. It just has to be done skillfully. When I'm planning a script, one of the things I try to figure out right at the beginning is how am I going to pull the reader into the story? Now, it doesn't necessarily have to involve me giving away the big idea of the script, but I have to engineer something that's going to keep them reading. Whatever that's organic to the story.
I see.
Like, I can't just say, hey, we got to establish that they live here and they work here and they're married to this person. That's not good enough. I got to establish those things in an interesting way. Also in a way that kind of hints at, what the movie's about. What story am I about to tell? There has to be in there in those first 10 pages. By the end of the 10 pages, the reader or whoever, the person watching the movie should know what the hell they're watching, what it's about. We kind of have an idea of where it's going. So, for me, I would say, okay, the first act of a movie is probably the easiest to write. It is. It's like, in my opinion, it's the easiest to write. You can, if you think hard enough, if you have a good idea, you could probably tease it enough to keep somebody reading. But in the second act is probably the toughest to write.
Right.
But at the end of the movie, what works and what will make an ending work is if a lot of things that you have set up in the movie pay off at the end of the movie. Also, that there's a proper escalation. Your second act can be bigger than your third act. Your third act has to be a proper escalation of the entire movie, right? And there has to be that payoff, that satisfying payoff, whether it's a twist or whether it's an amazing action scene or it's a love story where the boy gets to grow, whatever it is. And I get hit all the time by producers and my agent. They say, oh, but your ending is kind of like this. I like endings that are like kind of open. And they was, oh, don't do that. Don't do that. Right. So what I try to do is I try to satisfy everything that's needed for this book or for this film to work. And then right at the very end, I add on something a little extra, just a little extra for those people who like those little open endings, But to answer your question, I think that the beginning definitely has to hook in the first 10 pages, like Mike said. And the ending, like Mike said also, has to pay off everything that's been set up in the movie. You set it up, you got to pay it off at the end.
Just as a sidebar, I would say that a very common old tactic is to grab a bigger scene from later on in the story and slap it onto the first couple of pages. So the idea being that you grab like a moment where your protagonist is like hanging off of the edge of a building, and then you do the classic like 3 days earlier, XYZ.
Ending?
No, that's not book. What it is you're just letting the reader know on page one that this is, say, an action movie, that this is a thriller, that, even though we're going to spend some pages marinating in the character and their situation, don't worry, we're going to get to, there's good stuff here.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
It's funny though, Mike, I feel like when I read that, usually when I see it in a movie or when I read it, I feel it's kind of a cheat. I feel like somebody wrote a script or they made a movie and they didn't have the right ending, so they had to go and patch it up. They had to go and grab something from later in the movie and slap it on the front to make the beginning a little bit more exciting instead of figuring out a proper opening to this movie.
Yeah, it's a very scripty thing to do. I used to frequently see a lot of scripts come, especially from the Big Five, back when they were Big Five, but Big Four now. They very often, the agents would tell their clients, all right, well, we need, if it's an action movie about a girl who meets aliens, we need to open the scene where the girl meets the aliens. And then we cut back in time, and 3 days earlier, she's sitting there in school. She doesn't have any friends. Boy, I wish I had a friend. Da, 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 da. So,
I kind of cringe when I see the, 2 weeks earlier.
Yep.
I kind of cringe when I see that in the movie.
I'm not crazy about it either, but I also understand why it exists.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
I think I see that in television pilots a lot. More than film, the 3 days earlier, the 2 weeks earlier. It's like,
because especially in TV, the channel can always change at any moment. With feature, it's a little bit more relaxed because you used to operate under assumption that we've already got your money, you already bought the ticket, we can do whatever we want now. But now that like a lot of movies are streaming, it's like a lot of feature films that I see or stories shot in a feature film length model have the same immediacy of television. So, and again, it's, if you are writing a comedy, the opening scene should be funny. If you're writing a horror movie, you open with a scary scene, XYZ. And sometimes in, say, a thriller or an action movie, let's say, the danger to the character won't come until later in the story. What do? Either you establish your antagonist, or else you grab a scene from later on. There are classic films that dodge around this, like, nothing blows up on page one of Die Hard, but that's a somewhat older film.
Yeah.
That's drawn on the idea that we've already got your money. You've already bought the ticket. Now we're going to spend some time with John McClane, watch him drive around, talk to Argyle, talk about Christmas.
And, shout out for Bruce Willis and his family.
Yeah.
Wayne, you read a lot of comedies for the contest. I'm going to get down to the nitty gritty here. If you write a joke and you keep getting notes, don't get it, not funny, don't like it, take it out. But you, in your heart of hearts, believe that this, and we're talking on the level when you're getting notes. This isn't the studio saying take it out, but everybody you give it to for notes says not working, but you believe it does. What do you do?
Okay, let's talk about notes. You give a script to someone to read, and the way I work it, and this will answer your question, the way I work it is that I already know what that person's going to say. So I only listen to the things they say that I didn't expect them to say. I'm giving it to specific people. I know how my friend Bill's going to react to a script. I know how my friend Rob's going to react to a script. So if they say something I don't expect them to say, that's when I really listen. When it comes to jokes, I don't really give specific notes on one particular joke, unless it's like an overarching joke that kind of goes on and on. If it's just a single gag, probably wouldn't give a note on a single gag. But if there's like a joke that, carries over for like a whole act or something like that, if that mechanism is not working, then I might give a note on that. And if the writer's getting feedback from people who are saying that there's something about this gag that's not working, or it's too much, or it's going too far, then they probably should listen. I definitely test my ideas in a crazy way. I test them and test them and test them. And I do listen to what people have to say. But again, I know what people are going to say. And when I hear something I don't expect, that's the thing I really listen to.
Mike, what about thriller and horror scripts? What makes a script in, say, the thriller genre stand out from the pack? Thriller, horror stand out from the pack?
Often it's character work. I kind of countermanding what I said a few minutes ago. The first thing is concept. Does the movie know what kind of horror or thriller movie it is? And is it working to fulfill the needs of that particular genre or paradigm? There's a big difference between a ghost story and a shark movie, even though they're both technically horror movies. There's a big difference between, say, a 90s style erotic thriller and a thriller in which it's Liam Neeson is running around a city looking for a guy. Even though they're both thrillers, they both have different needs within their paradigm and their subgenre. So it's ultimately, is there a big high concept? Because that will drive everything else. For instance, I've read 100 million zombie scripts, and as much as I dearly love zombie movies, and the benefit of a zombie movie is, as I mentioned before, you put a zombie on a one sheet and we instantly get exactly where it exists in the ecosystem of the industry. But it's really, really hard to get excited about a zombie script because I've read so many of them, and almost none of them have a fresh concept or idea. It's mostly this weird kind of Mad Libs version of people being zombified, location.
Just curious, do you have a favorite zombie movie?
I do. Train to Busan. Well, Return of the Living Dead and Train to Busan. So,
what was the second one?
Train to Busan. It's a Korean.
I love that movie.
Yeah, it's excellent. I would have to go with a classic and say Dawn of the Dead. As much as I love night and love day, you can't go wrong with the classic.
Interestingly enough, just because we're on this topic, there was a script that Mike read and I read that we had totally different feelings about. In fact, I ended up teaming up with the writer who wrote the script, and we took his script out and tried to set it up. But Mike did not like the script at all. It was a zombie script.
Yeah?
Yeah, it was a script called Kiss Me Dead. Do you remember that script?
I don't, but if you started telling me details,
it's basically a film noir with zombies.
Oh, that sounds cool.
Right. Yeah. I like, weirdly enough, I have a project called Dead City Chicago that I originally conceived as a pilot for a TV series, and we kind of shopped it around town. And there was kind of a consistent desire for IP. It's like, well, it's kind of expensive on the page. It would be a lot better if this was adapted from underlying property. So I wrote a novelette, and and I'm actually halfway through the second book. So, like, I'm not averse to the idea of zombie noir. The more I think about it, the more I remember that one. I think that I just didn't connect with the specific take in
I'm
that.
not putting you on the spot because you didn't like it. I mean, this is interesting that you brought that up. For me, you love something, you don't know how other people don't get it. Like, it's like, how did I get this? Is such a good script. But
yeah, that's the thing, man. Is like because I watch so many horror movies and I read so many horror scripts, I realize that I react to the ones that feel fresh or new or interesting or trying to do something kind of daring and different. Like I can distinctly remember scripts that I've read like 5, 7, 10 years ago because they jumped out at me. I'm like, wow, I've never read this one. But at the same time, I also have to think, I have to put the producer hat on and be like, all right, so is that fresh and new, quote unquote, enough that people would see it as weird and I would have a hard time getting it made? And I mean, like, for the project that we're just shopping at Con, we actually got some pushback from some of the buyers because there's kind of a sci-fi element to it. There's also like kind of a ghost element to it, but there's also like a little bit of a slasher element to it. And like a couple of buyers were just like, I don't know exactly what this is. It's like, am I ordering a hot dog, a hamburger, or a chicken sandwich? You gotta tell me. And weirdly enough, that's how the buyers think. And ultimately, the buyers are the people to whom producers are selling, so they have to think in those terms as well.
Going back to Dwayne and the train to Busan, I just want to say that we have somebody from Busan listens to the Writers Hangout, and I just want to give a shout out to that person. And every time I see Busan on the analytics, I think of that movie. So.
Okay. If you're a listing person in Busan, watch out when you get on trains.
This is another question that we ask all the judges. What would you say to a screenwriter who knows they wrote an excellent script, but it doesn't win?
Show me the screenwriter who doesn't think that they've written an excellent script.
Okay.
Hey, would you like to read my screenplay? It's terrible. It's like, I'm speaking hypothetically. It's like,
well, what, like, maybe you mean like people tell them that it's like, it's hard to,
well, you wrote, I am sure there are people that are delusional out there, but a lot of good scripts don't get chosen. And what do you say to those writers?
Well, there's a reason for that.
Are we back to premise concept, you think?
Yes, we are. But Dwayne, please lead off.
Okay, so here's the thing. There's a lot of fantastic scripts out there. I've read them. Okay, I've read the scripts. Some of them are amazing. But just because you write a good script, that's not enough. I know that sounds terrible and it's like heartbreaking in a way, but it's just not enough. You write, look, obviously the price of getting through the door is writing a great script, right? So. Right. Some things are out of your control. One of those things is who that script gets in front of, who that script lands in front of. It's just luck involved. I play poker, right? I play a perfect game of poker, but you know what? I don't win all the time because there's an element of luck. And in this game of screenwriting, there's an element of luck. So in poker, there's a variance, right? If you play the right way long enough, things will work out in your favor. And I do believe that's the same for writing. If you write solid screenplays, if you master your craft, and you put stuff out there, eventually it will land in front of the right person.
Right.
But just because you write a great script doesn't mean that the doors are going to fly open for you and they're going to welcome you in with trumpets blowing. That's just not the way it works. You got to get a champion too. So somebody has to find your script, like your script, and then be a champion for your script.
Yes.
And so it's not just enough to write a great script, in my opinion.
I would, kind of building on that thought, I read a lot of screenplays where they're doing, quote unquote, everything right. Characters are strong, dialogue is good, storytelling clicks, structure is rock solid, execution is pro, ... But there's no there's no hook, there's no idea, there's no high concept. I have seen projects that have gotten endlessly redeveloped, rewritten, tons of notes over the course of months and years, different writers, XY, different teams, different financing. The producers keep trying to put it together again and again and again because it's a big high concept. They know that if they can crack it, that they're going to have a movie on their hands.
Right.
And, so it's that's kind of the thing. It's like good, it can be filled in, craft skills can be taught, skills can be developed, but ideas have to be caught in the wild. And that's the idea. It's like a big high concept is like you grab that and you go, oh yeah, now all we need is a take that gets us made.
Mike is right in the sense that I notice when I read a lot of scripts for Page, I'm always amazed at how like technically beautiful some of these scripts are. I mean, they are like on point. I mean, the structure is right, the characters work, everything. It's like, wow. It's like, is this a professional screenwriter? But there's no idea. The idea is just blah. It's just what I call too familiar. Like I've read this, I've seen this movie a million times. It's like, so they've mastered all the other stuff, but they're not taking the time to find that amazing idea. So what I usually write when I do coverage of the script, I say, look, your screenwriting kung fu is like, it's amazing, but you need to stop and just think about, like, just come up with an amazing idea. When you marry those two things together, you'll have something.
I think we found the title for the episode, Screenwriting Kung Fu.
Well, here's another example. Speaking to a paradigm that was super white hot in the late 90s, but has since become outplayed, is the serial killer thriller, in which we have a serial killer who has kind of a kooky MO. They're killing people based on nursery rhymes or whatever. And our protagonist is a detective, and ordinarily, if it's in a city, he's like an alcoholic guy who's got an ex-wife and a kid, and and he's got a partner who's kind of a rumpled dude who likes to talk about sex, and he eats big sandwiches in the car. And at the very end, they're going to end up in a situation where the killer is like, "We're not so different, you and I." And someone's hanging off the end of a building, and it's raining, and the killer flies back and goes, "No!" Or else they think the partner is dead, but actually he pops up to the last second and he shoots the guy just as he's about to. I've read 100 million of those screenplays, and here's the thing, man. If you were to roll up with a take on that, where writing is good, execution is pro, structure is rock solid, dialogue is great, character is great, even if you wave your magic wand and say, okay, movie stars are in this movie, financing attaches, will the audience watch that? Or will they be like, I've seen a million of these things before, who cares? It doesn't matter. But on the flip side, if you walk into a room, and this is completely hypothetical, but you go, okay, 7, but the killer is James Bond. The execs go, whoa! Because we're taking the foundation of a tried and true paradigm or a subgenre, and we're finding that little twist. It's, the example I usually use is, the slice of pineapple on a hamburger. It's like, you could throw a rock in LA and hit a million places that serve a cheeseburger, and some of them are really good cheeseburgers too. But this one place serves it with a slice of pineapple on it. They call it the Hawaii burger. And it's like, ooh, that's new. And so people go across the country to go to one place where they can get a cheeseburger that has a slice of pineapple on it. And so I
have a name for that. It's called uniquely derivative.
Yeah.
Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Just add another a unique little tweak to the wheel that makes it feel new.
Wrapping up with you guys, is there any specific advice we might have not covered that you'd like to give to the writers out there who are writing in your genre?
I have a very specific piece of advice, and it works for any genre. It's all about POV. So there was a screenwriter, William Goldman. He used to say, always write for a star. He wrote that in one of his books, always write for a star. When I read a script, I want to know whose story you're telling. What POV is the story? Like, who are we following in the story? Right? I read too many scripts where the script is like, it's on this character, then the next scene they're focusing on these other characters, then the other scene they're focusing on this other character. Then that's television. That's not movies. This is my opinion, folks. This is my opinion, but this is what I believe. So take a great movie like Raiders of the Lost Ark, right? How many scenes is Indiana Jones in? He's in every scene. It's his movie. We're following his story, right?
Right.
When you write them, so this is my advice. I'm not saying that every movie has to be like this. Obviously, there are examples of movies that are not like this. But I think if you poke around at what the best movies are, a lot of them have a clear main character who carries the movie from beginning to end. He's in almost, or she's in almost every single scene. It's about them. We are looking over their shoulder, experiencing the events as they experience them. That if you just wrote your movie like that, it would be 50% better. If you're jumping around with all these people, having to establish this person, having to establish this person. And every time you do that, you're reminding people they're watching a movie because you're just jumping, you're head hopping. So my advice is, when you sit down and come up with your great idea, your great concept for your script, like plan it so that you're writing it. Plan it for a hero. Plan it for a star. Plan it like Tom Cruise is going to star in that movie. Because I tell you one thing, Tom Cruise is not going to star in a movie where he's not in every scene. Right? No star is. So just keep that in mind when you write your scripts. Write for a star.
How about you, Mike? Take us home, Mike.
Be cognizant of the genre for which you're writing. If you're going to write in comedy, watch a lot of comedies. And read books that are funny. If you're going to write for horror, watch a lot of horror movies. You should understand how other people have addressed the task of trying to scare an audience. And you can find a lot of interesting influences and like little things that you can lift. But at the same time, you never want to lift wholesale from a very direct thing. Like I within the past 6 months, I've read like 2 screenplays where I got up to about plot point 1. I'm like, oh, all this is XYZ movie with the serial numbers filed off. And most readers might not even know that, but I notice it because I watch a lot of these movies. So I'll be like, oh, you've taken this relatively obscure Irish film and you've sanded off the serial numbers. And that's a script that you wrote. And
can we back up there?
Yeah.
I lost that a little. Is that okay to do, to send off the serial numbers?
No, not at all. Not
as
not
long as you make it your own. But don't we always kind of borrow? Do writers borrow all the time? But
yeah. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be influenced. For instance, I directed. Perfect example. I directed a horror movie called Death Metal, and in that movie, if you're aware, if you're as deeply marinated in horror, like you'll from one scene and choice to the next, you'll be able to be, oh, this is Hellraiser, oh, this is The Shining, oh, this is this, oh, this is that. But they're all influences and they're baked into the whole of the good, rather than me being like, oh, well, I just rewrote Dawn of the Dead and I did a Mad Libs, I changed the name and hopefully no one will notice.
Yeah.
See what I mean? For instance, if I were writing comedy, I would want to read funny scripts, watch funny movies, watch funny TV shows, and along the way find my own voice, and then work to crack the task of making an audience laugh.
Gentlemen, thank you. This has been so informative, and I think you're going to help a lot of writers out there. Would you like to give out your socials for people to follow you?
I'm just rarely, I've got a Facebook, but it's mostly for like friends. I do have a Twitter that I use mostly for self-aggrandizement. Like when you post this, I'll post a link for it. But I'm not saying they're being like, Obi-Wan Kenobi's episode 3, WTF. Like I don't have time for that kind of stuff. But
Dwayne, as you said that to the social media director.
Yeah, that's your job. I leave it to you. I leave it to the experts.
Thank you.
I have an office page. I have an office page on Facebook. It's Dwayne Alexander Smith. Just type that in.
Cool.
You'll find it.
You guys are too busy. I get it. You're cool. Not me.
It's like, cool. I'm just I'm desperately trying to get movies made. It's like
we're on to more other things. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Really appreciated you being with us on the Writers Hangout.
My sincere pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Yes, thank you. It's fun. Very fun.
That's a wrap for the Writers Hangout. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, like, and thrive. Till we get to hang out again, keep writing. The world needs your stories. The Writers Hangout is sponsored by the Page International Screenwriting Awards. Executive producer, Kristen O'Verne. Producers, Terry Sampson and Sandy Adamitis. Music by Ethan Stoller.